Hi, I'm Don Famularo, and I'm here in my Wisdom drum shed on Long Island in New York, and I had the opportunity to speak with Joe Morello. Joe Morello, I am so impressed with, who has an incredible school in Italy that has inspired and continues to inspire many drummers from now for many years. So Gigi, I thank you so much for all of your effort and what you do for drummers in Italy. And this day really is about a tribute to Joe Morello, the great Joe Morello. I had the chance of knowing Joe for many years. I met Joe in the early 1970s, around 1971. And this man was not only a fantastic musician and an incredible drummer, but an absolutely beautiful human being. A great man who was really about helping as many people as he could. And of course, if you were a drummer, you got some extra help because he just loved drums. Well, Joe really became an icon, a legend, because of his sheer drive and perseverance and his incredible talent of playing drums as a musician. We know him with the band Brubeck Quartet. Probably the song Take 5, which is in 5/4, is probably one of the most famous, if not the most famous jazz song on this planet. And when you hear that song and you hear that great drumming, as I was a child on the radio, not only did we hear a jazz song, Take 5, but the song was in 5/4, which was an odd time, which was incredible at that time during the early 60s, but also the song featured a drum solo. So to hear all of that on the radio was an incredible eye-opening event to step into the world of Joe Morello and the greatness of what he has given us through his entire lifetime. Well, Joe was a student of George Lawrence Stone, and as a child, Joe would take lessons from him in Springfield, Massachusetts, up near the Boston area. And what was amazing about it is that Joe just thrived in playing drums. He first started playing violin, then switched to drums when he realized he just wasn't going to be another Heifetz. Joe had a very high standard of music, and he was attracted to drums, and lucky for us that he pursued this for the rest of his life. Well, as a student of George Lawrence Stone, and as you know George Lawrence Stone, the writer of the book Stick Control, Joe really became George Lawrence Stone's best student. Joe understood what Stone was saying about technique and the incredible movement of what Joe did and understood from George Lawrence Stone. Joe took it to many great levels in all of his playing and all of his solos worldwide. So this book was a very big part of Morello, and of course immensely used in his lessons as a student when I was there back in the early 70s. Next was George Lawrence Stone's second book. And what was amazing about this book is George Lawrence Stone began to see that Joe Morello was adding accents into the book Stick Control all over the place just to make, I guess, some of the patterns more challenging. So when George Lawrence Stone saw this, he was so impressed with Morello, he wanted to write a book, which he did, called Accents and Rebounds, and he dedicated that first page to Joe Morello. And he put it here, which I think was so profound, dedicated to Joe Morello, outstanding perfectionist in modern drumming, which Joe really was. Well, in the course of time, as Joe was still playing with the Brubeck Quartet, he began to write some books. And Joe wrote some phenomenal books. This one was called New Directions in Rhythm, which featured grooves in 3/4 and 5/4. And which was amazing at that time for books to come out like this here, which just opened up our minds tremendously. I went through this book with Joe, and it was amazing to experience just hearing Joe play many of these odd time feels in jazz that just swung and felt so good. A great book. Another book Joe wrote many years ago was called Off the Record. A great book with all different types of patterns and independence. I'm not sure if you can find the book, I'm sure you can if you track it down, but just an incredible book to have to again open your mind in all these different ideas. Then Joe wrote Rudimental Jazz. Of course you can see, I had Joe sign all these for me in the course of time, which was just so magical. But with this, these books really became great to the point that this book has now been reissued. It just came out on Modern Drummer Publications, so if you can track this down, absolutely, through Hal Leonard, you'll find that these ideas in here were all captured. Joe was able to see this before he passed away, and we were so happy to see the book being reissued. So track this down. Then Joe began to put his own books together, just in the mid-80s, Master Studies, which is an absolute classic. You know, when you work on Stick Control, after you finish Stick Control, the place to then go really is Accents and Rebounds and then Master Studies 1, which Joe put together. And even though you'll probably never finish Stick Control, as I'm still working on it, you'll also never finish Joe Morello's books. They'll be with you for the rest of your life, constantly inspiring you and making you think differently. Master Studies 1 Absolutely a classic. All of my students go through it, as they do through Master Studies 2. It was a great follow-up from what George Lawrence Stone taught Joe Morello to what he was doing now with his lessons in his recent years. Brilliant exercises and a brilliant way to keep your hands in shape and open you up to entirely new ideas. I also did a lot of these books with my feet, so Joe didn't realize it until I finally explained to him that these really are actually good feet exercise books if you want to work on your double bass drum playing. Absolutely incredible. Some of his top students that went on to do great things, Danny Gottlieb, who played with Pat Metheny, just recently came out with a book on Hudson Music, hudsonmusic.com. Check out what they have to offer. The Evolution of Jazz Drumming, a brilliant book to go through. Danny Gottlieb is a phenomenal player and a great educator, a student of Joe Morello. And also the great John Riley, who had played with Woody Herman for many, many years. John Riley, another phenomenal player, a phenomenal teacher. The Art of Bop Drumming, Beyond Bop Drumming, his book Master Classes. There's so many great books. Those are on alfred.com. Check them out. Search it, learn the material from all these great students that came from Jim. I was so honored to have my book, which I dedicated to Joe Morello and Jim Chapin and all these great players. It was an incredible, exciting time to spend some time with Joe Morello and have these great, great memories. When Joe passed away on March 12th, it was pretty sad because we realized that this entire generation now has lost another of these great players, that it becomes our responsibility to push this art form further and to really get out there and keep the memory of Joe Morello alive. I think, Gigi, what you're doing here with the school and having all these students here is just that. And as we do this all around the world, it goes to show that a great player like Joe Morello dedicated himself to drumming, pushed himself real hard, and shared his talent with the world. And that really is the message that I believe all of you students have to understand. Play from your heart, give us your talent, share it every day, have fun, and please keep the memory of Joe Morello alive. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.